Thank you very much for sparing some time on a Thursday, gloomy and wet Thursday evening. I think where most of us are. It's a really varied group of people, which is great. It wasn't really intended at any particular audience or population. It was out there as an open invitation. So we've got some coaches, we've got some meet organisers, and we've got some people from swimming, para-swimming, open water swimming, etc. So we should have most of the district swimming conveners on, I think, as well. Certainly they were signed up, so at some point I think they will appear. This is really me up front doing the presenting, but I think it's important at the start to recognise that this is not the doctrine according to Alan Lynn, nor is it to the doctrine according to Scottish Swimming. As you'll hear from me just in a second, there are an awful lot of people, an awful lot of work has gone into getting us to this point within the sport. So although I can't name everybody, I'm sure we'll refer to some of them, and I'm sure we'll hear from most of them, I think, as the evening goes on. So a few slides from me just to set the context, and then we'll get into the question and answer session. As Build, Gordon, Glasgow head coach at Swim West Lothian, is going to act as my chat show host, but chat scanner, and make sure that if there are any questions in the chat as I'm going through, then we can sort of field those with Gordon's help a wee bit later on. And just before I press go on the rest of things, again, recognising that there's a whole lot of different things going on that are beginning to converge, and some of you will have heard me say that before. So this is about competition framework, but we've got new coach education structure being developed at the moment, and we also have made some changes to the national programme, and that reaches to all parts of the sport, really, not just those who do times to be on squads and the likes. So this is part of that converging set of projects. And just some of you will know the significance of the number 133. That's how many years Scottish Swimming has actually been in existence, which is a fantastically long period of time. And that's taken us through the Boer War, 2 world wars, several pandemics, far too many to name. So this last one that we're emerging from, thankfully, is not the first time that sport or swimming in Scotland has had to contend with a number of different challenges. So we are where we are as a result of our resolve and our resilience over those 133 years. And today is no different as far as that's concerned. I've used this initial slide a couple of times in presenting to different groups, and it's because this is a culmination of a large body of work, as I've said, and the way in which I think we keep this foremost in our minds is that we're looking at a national competition framework, but that extends down to district competition guidance and local competition flexibility. So we're not saying this is what has to happen. We're setting the framework, we're allowing the freedom, if you like, giving the flexibility and the agility to districts to do what suits their local needs, and beyond that, some local flexibility so that we cater for as many of the swimmers in the sport as we can. What was published on Hive, and what most of you will have seen, is incomplete by its very nature. I see there are some open water people who signed up for the call, and I think are on the call as well. For example, there isn't any specific information on that calendar about open water, but if it's to be comprehensive, then some dialogue has to take place with the open water community, the marathon swimming community, to make sure that it is a properly integrated and inclusive calendar. So maybe more of that a wee bit later on. 703 people, that's another number to throw at you. 703 people participated in the survey that we did over these 5 constituencies, populations within the sport: athletes, swimmers, coaches, clubs, districts, parents, carers, etc. And you can see the breakdown there, but 703 people is a really good return, particularly given when this was done, we were in lockdown and during the pandemic and so on. And the words that are on there will not surprise you, because most of you will have completed that survey, and you can see what was the feedback. Competitions were long and boring. They were They were more focused on times than racing and fun. They weren't suitable for every part of the swimming population, largely focused on age group swimming, not on long-term outcomes, and focused on, at times, clubs making money as opposed to providing appropriate competitive opportunities. There were many other things in that report, but these were the sort of key criticisms, if you like, about our existing, or if you like, previous competition structure. So the consultation process told us that we needed to have these core principles. And again, you can all read, you don't need me to go through every one of these in turn, but these are much more positive principles, much more positive outcomes than perhaps that previous slide has indicated. And as we go through these few slides just now, I'll refer to some or most of these in one way or another by giving examples. And as I said at the start, we can't, none of us can do this in isolation. I can't, Swimming Committee can't, Scottish Swimming as a business, as an organisation can't. It relies on, it thrives on, in fact, everybody on this call and many others to be part of the process of providing or delivering on these core principles. So I think it's important to recognise at the start that we can't, none of us can do this in isolation. And these were the recommendations in full from the competition review group, most of which I'll refer to tonight and we'll probably discuss in the questions, but there are a number of things in here that refer to those core principles and that were very, very firmly conclusive in the outcomes and the recommendations of the competition review. So a bit more specific, the goals that we had, and particularly just now, we're talking about January to July 2022. That's when the recommendations are supposed to come into play, supposed to be put in place. So whatever we have at the moment, and there may be some questions around that, where the transition period between what we had emerging from the COVID restrictions and building towards what was published in terms of the calendar for January to July. So next September, or whenever the season starts, next 2022, next year, we will have a complete season with the recommendations and of course with the lessons learned from what we're doing just now and what we'll do in the first 7 months of next year. And there are some guiding, overarching principles and frameworks, athlete development and coach development frameworks that of course we keep in our mind all the time as we try to do the right thing and by the sport itself and by the people within it.
Alan, just before you nip onto that one, I'm being a terrible chat master. I missed the first question. I wasn't expecting one on slide 1. I think you did answer it though. It's Susan was asking, will masters be incorporated in order to help us retain older swimmers?
Yes, that was a part of the review group, Susan. It's not part of what I'm talking about just now, but we consulted with and got some feedback from the masters community, and yes, it's a good point to make in terms of that full competitive spectrum, but they will be, yes, for certain. They are not operating in isolation either. They're very much an integrated part of this. Some questions that were guiding the work that we did, and I keep referring to we because largely the competition review group and swimming committee have been responsible for getting us to this point. Best mechanism for achieving the goals, delivering on those outcomes is something that was driving. Accommodating all the context, we'll just asked about masters. I've referred to open water, and of course there's all the rest of the sport, if you like, in terms of swimming and para swimming, that we're trying to please everybody, which of course is an impossible task. And we've got a calendar to have a look at and to refer to. One of the questions driving me in dealing with and speaking to the swimming committee was how much prescription was required or desired, if you like, from national to district level. Certainly no desire to have prescription at that local flexibility level. Is that a question that came in there, Gordon, or can it wait?
No further questions, Susan. Was just thanking you.
Oh, great, Seth. Thanks, Susan. So these are some other things that were considered. So when does the season start? there is a window for a certain level of swimmer in terms of qualification for events later in the season that is partly out of our control, but we can control what competitions are within the window that's set by British Swimming. So that is a consideration for us. School holidays are a bit of a nightmare. Not everybody's off at the same time. Some are off for 1, some are off for 2 weeks, some are off just for a few days. So it's impossible to have a sort of national approach to that. I put SQA assessments because I don't know what that's going to mean in terms of exams, but the SQA are going to have assessments at that normal period in the year, and we'll have to consider the impact of that on our young people and also on the competitions that we put on. Integration, what type of meets, inclusivity, we're driving the calendar process as well. And from the review group came children age group and senior swimming, which did include masters in the report recommendations, but you'll see that split this up into the senior school and the junior school, if you like, in terms of high school, because of that distinction with the SQA assessments. Another thing that came out of the review group was when would there be periods of training? So December and January, when traditionally the competitions are over, was very much seen to be emphasised as a period of training. And also, this is largely about the coach guidance and the coach implementation of the recommendations, but when people are not racing, they should be training. During the SQA assessments, it's likely that the people who are sitting those exams and doing assessments wouldn't be competing most of the time. And then how do we get them to be at the best whenever we want them to be at the best in the season? Considerations for coaches. In terms of the district events, then the calendar provides 5 weekend options, not 5 weekends for district championships, but 5 weekends where it's district driven events that are running, be they time trials, be they championships, and so on. A standard set of ages across the districts to try and allow for similar comparisons and programs to be driven. So you can see the 4 groupings there, if you like. Events can either be short course or long course. We know, for example, Dundee is closed at the moment, so difficult to have a long course or short course event there, but not everyone has access to long course swimming, for example, in that first part of the year. And something that I put out there for people to consider was whether or not there was a way of driving a program through a Friday night and a Saturday and Sunday to perhaps provide a bit more flexibility with event programming. And that's all very well. And the example that I would give is if you're a snags qualifier, then you're a snags qualifier, and that's probably the level at which you pitch your season. But not everyone is a snags qualifier. Somebody might only qualify for 1 snags event. What do we do to provide competitions that are meaningful for the people who are on the margins? And really the guidance, the drive for that has to be from coaches across the clubs, right, as to what's the appropriate level for the swimmers that they have, is it national, district or club? And we need to provide opportunities for all of them. You've seen that in the calendar. And finally, when does the season end? For some, it's when the school term finishes in June. For others, it goes maybe to the Scottish Summer Meet or its equivalent. And for others, again, a smaller group, it's the British Summer Championships, or even beyond that if they're at international level. So for everyone, the season ends at a different time. We've got to recognise and provide for that as well. Coaching education, if you like, coach development is a key part of this. This is new in the sense of we're starting with a bit of a blank sheet of paper. Coaches need to understand their role in all of this, as well as everyone else. And lastly, it was very much a key recommendation, but trying to put the fun back into racing and meet planning so that it doesn't just become driven by times and qualifying standards, etc., that there is an element of strong element of fun as part of meet programming and planning. I have to give thanks to Lynn Alderton for most of this. I've tweaked it a wee bit, but this is to try and represent everything that's in the calendar by way of the recommendations that came in the competition review group. So our children, age 7 to 11, our age group competition, and our senior 16 plus competition, the sorts of opportunities that there are in a sort of tiered or tiled fashion. there. I've got these slides and everything. The recording will obviously be available for everybody. But Lynn did a super job on this. As I say, I tweaked the odd word here or there, but largely the concept and the representation of that is down to her, and I thank her for that. This isn't the whole calendar because you had the chance to look at that, and it'd be daft to try and look at it. Some of you are on small screens like phones and tablets, but you will have seen that and the detail and the intention of that. So I'm sure that's going to drive some of the questions that we're about to deal with. But there is hopefully enough density of competition that you can see in that calendar that provides for district championships, district time trials, graded meets, which I'm just going to mention, one-day introductory meets with 2 sessions in it for the youngsters, building towards 2-day, 2-session meets for them, and of course everything else that you would normally associate with the calendar at sort of national level snags and open championships and so on. There's a lot of detail that I don't intend to go into there because you'll have seen it. You will have questions, and there's no point in me trying to give all the information in anticipation of your questions now. It's just to say that what I've said previously is what has driven us to develop this calendar. And possibly the newest thing, not in concept, but the newest in terms of detail is the graded meet proposal, where we're trying to provide meets for people at a similar level, and they would be open meets mostly, but also just providing those incentives for swimmers to measure their progress. I'm not a big fan of what happens in some other countries like Canada and America, where they sort of label the kids as a particular grade. I don't know that we necessarily need to do that. I think it's implied and obvious that if you get to the next level of grade that you have moved up. But I don't know that labeling and categorizing people is necessarily a healthy thing or a useful thing for us to do. And there's an example there of sometimes for the younger ages across a whole range of different grades that a quick glance will show you that the 12-year-old boys in 50 freestyle at the top end would be going 27.7 pretty fast, but at the other end would be over 40 seconds, which is a bit more reasonable for some of our younger and swimmers who are in a development part of their journey. So there's a whole suite of these, and I thank Lynn for the diagram, thank Ian Wright for driving the development of these tables. A fantastic amount of work going into that, and Ian also helps us with the national squad programming times too. So I'm not sure if Ian's on the call, but certainly would want to record my thanks for him publicly for that. And lastly is to recognise that this is not complete. I said at the start it wasn't full. There's things that will probably still have to go in there, but we committed in the competition review process to make sure that we regularly review this. So whether that goes through the season or at the end of the season, in 2 or 3 years' time, we should be able to say this is the fixed calendar because of all the lessons that we've learned through 21, 22, 23, and so on. And this is the grand plan, the grand aim. I'll let you read that, and I've got one more slide to finish. I like a quote, I like a picture, I like a strong philosophical message, either at the start or at the end of presentations. And for me, we are emerging from all of the things that we know we've been dealing with as a society. I mentioned the 133 years of Scottish swimming and the challenges that have come with that, whether they be conflict or pandemic related. We continue to be strong, we continue to work together. And I think windmills is one way. Wind farm would be very contemporary in terms of describing what we're trying to do, but we want to move things on. We want to generate as much positive and forward momentum as we can. This is an opportunity to ask some questions of me and others who are on the call who may be better placed to answer those, and I'm more than happy to do that if they're in the chat, or if you want to unmute yourself and ask those questions. I'd be delighted to do it and hopefully continue to build some more windmills and move us on.
So we've got one already in the chat, and if people don't want to put it into the chat for everyone, feel free to direct message. I've got one here, just in general terms, talking about I was going to say the BS window, the British swimming window, closes quite early next year. So obviously, as we put all these new things into place, taking that into account for the kind of minority that are impacted. Is that something that we're all? I'm guessing we're already ahead of the game on.
Yeah, I think we are. We've tried to. I mean, previously, we were driven quite a lot by that at a certain level, as you know, Gordon.
Yeah.
And when we can't control all of that, and if we were wanting to do it, we would do it differently. But we're part of that bigger system at that top end, so we nudge along the best we can to try and change what those dates are or influence what those dates are. But ultimately, the education system is different outside of Scotland, and therefore there is a different driver, if you like, down south. So we continue to try and make the best of that we can. Most people, our data tells us that most people from Scotland qualify for the British Summer Championships at snags, which is very much within the window as it stands at the moment. So we would be fiercely protective of ensuring that snags continue to be in the window as well as other opportunities, but we're not putting everything into the window because I think that just restricts what we can try to do.
Okay, so I guess that was one of the queries, is that's one of the reasons maybe why I'll not use the acronym for it, the Glasgow International Swim Meet is not within the window.
Yeah, and it wasn't a problem for them. It's a standalone meet, probably at the end of that SQA assessment period, and may take a different format other than just qualifying for British Summer. So Ian and the Glasgow folk, I think, without putting words in their mouth, they're happy for it to stand alone.
Okay, I've got one here, just someone thanking you for the presentation, Vicky. There hasn't seen the calendar, which is on Hive, and if you don't have access to that, we can definitely
just drop me a note with your email, Vicky, and I'll make sure that you've got access to Hive. There's a whole bunch of information on there, not just the calendar. So thank you.
And a question here from Helen McGeorge at Cooperand District. So tables listing the times for the different levels of graded meets, they were mentioned in the information email. Obviously you showed a snippet of them there. What's the current status, and when are they likely to be published and available for mass?
Very, very soon, I hope. Helen, thanks for your question. We have a swimming committee meeting, I think, in about 10 days' time. It's not next week, but the week after. So I would intend to take those tables to the swimming committee for, if you like, oversight and approval. And then we would be making those available along with whatever the outcomes are from tonight and the feedback process. So yeah, as soon as possible, so that everybody's aware. There are other things that are coming out too, and we don't want to just throw everything out at once and perhaps people miss the intention of a particular either set of tables or policy.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Bear with me. I don't know if Nikki wants to do this one, otherwise I'm reading out a fairly long story. If I can't see, can I see Nikki there?
I see it there, yeah.
You got that.
Reason so time was given for. I think that you could have had the meet. I suppose that there's not a lot of time for you, Nikki, in terms of if you meet on a Friday. But I know other people have already had their first Friday and maybe got a wee bit more time. So if that is restrictive, I appreciate if it's Friday to Sunday. But I know some people are actually running their meet on Sunday because they can't make other things that were running that day. So
is there a lag time? I know the people that are going to be dealing with the entries and results will be shaking their head and will have a good answer to that. So it's maybe worth them unmuting and answering it. Is there a lag time for people? And I do apologise for asking it, Susan. I'm guessing that's what was being asked there.
Yeah, I stumbled my way through the answer.
I mean, there should be enough time between doing your actual running it and doing the Sunday results coming in. I can give a little bit of leeway, but not a lot, because the turnaround time is really tight on this end of things. We've given clubs as much time as possible to put in, but our time to get things turned around is probably more tight than yours is. Just depends how nice you are, and if you've got a bottle of red wine kicking about somewhere.
So I'm guessing no, there's no leeway, but because you're kind, if the odd occasion arises, you'll be helpful.
Yes, as long as there's justification for it. Gordon, you know that as well as me.
It's probably going to be me that's asking you.
Just if it goes in and you speak to Lindsay will come and I'll see what we can do, but everything needs to go through Lindsay initially.
Excuse me.
Thank you. Just in case people weren't aware, 93 teams entered across the country, which is fantastic to get close to 100 teams first time around is great, and absolutely thrilled that so many people are willing to do that. Some multiple entries from some clubs and single entries from others, but 93 I think is a great start to the National Leagues. Other questions?
So can I ask a question? Seeing Courtney here.
Yes,
is it
go on,
okay
Ian.
just to verbally ask a question?
Of course.
So it's probably not a question, but maybe Alan, you could share your screen with the snapshot of the calendar, which I think was maybe January, February, March or something like that.
Yeah.
And maybe just talk through a typical month for your average layman. Apologies if that seems simplistic, but it would certainly benefit myself.
Let me just
to bring it to life for us. There's maybe an assumption that everyone on the call understands it, and if I'm the only one who doesn't, then I apologise.
There's no such thing as a daft question, Ian. You know that. Let me just pull that up.
Yeah, just daft answers.
Well, we're not there yet, but give me time.
Here they come.
All right, we're still recording. So, can everyone see that? Okay, Ian, can you see that on your screen? Thank you. So I mentioned about training December and January. So the first couple of weeks of January would be given over to clubs to get back in if they're restricted over the holiday period in order to get some training in. So the weekend, the 16th of January, will be a start of racing for many. A Pentaqua meet is on a 1 or a 2 day basis would be where everyone who comes to the meet swims all 5 events. So you swim the 4 strokes and medley. So if you were a kid, a youngster, you might go 450s, 4-stroke 50s and 100 IM. For the others, it'd be 4 stroke 100s and a 200 IM. I think probably at that stage of the season, you might not do the 4 200s and a 400 IM, but that's the principle anyway. And you would add up all the times, and the person who had the fastest time would win. The Pentaqua competition, you could do it by age, in terms of the awards, or you could simply run it like a graded type meet where you could just seed people and run the heats from slowest to fastest or fastest to slowest. So that would be your kickoff and an opportunity for everybody. I have to say I've been sort of guided my philosophy on that by the notion of everybody doing all 4 strokes, both in training and the competition. And experience would say that although you may not improve on everything at once, you'll certainly improve on something if you're working on all of them at various points in your season or in your career. And then in January develops, if we just stick to the children age group and senior columns, never mind the rest of it, you would start the process for a children's competition with a 1 day 2 session meet. And for those who were older and taking part in the district, either time trials or championships, then that would be the first opportunity for them if you like to register some times on an accredited basis. Likewise, on the second or the last weekend in January, next time around, and these are opportunities for meets to be run. So if a club wants to run a 1 day 2 session meet for kids, then they would apply to the district in the appropriate way for the license to run that. That's not going to be any change to the way things currently run, but the district would run their own championships or their accredited event in the normal way. And on that last weekend, rather than it being a district event, then there's an opportunity for open graded meets, which could take you outside of your district, competing against kids of a similar level within reasonable travelling distance, I would guess. But again, that would be up to clubs to apply to the relevant district to run that particular meet. There is a discussion to be had with the swimming committee around the prescription of what those graded meets should be like. So how many of each type should be in each district. It wasn't for me to put that on here right away, but that conversation is ongoing, and certainly one that I think the district swimming commissioners very much want to play a part in, to say, provide opportunities for everyone that we can in our district, but also allow them the opportunity across the country to get the opportunities that they want to swim at that certain level, in addition to the championship events. February is similar, if you like, in terms of just what the opportunities are, district or graded meet opportunities, and then given the, I suppose, often spoken about and recently commented on by people in Scottish and British swimming, the distance swimming is very poor. Whether that's because people have not been given the opportunity to race it or they're not training for it. If we in a competition framework provide those opportunities, then we can run meets for 400, 800, 1500 to allow those opportunities to take place. I know that City of Glasgow ran distance opportunities last week or the week before, and something like 80 swimmers took part in distance events and got times on that. So it can be done either intra or inter club basis. And you can just about see March on there, Ian and everyone else. It's a similar process in terms of the opportunities that there are. And I would point out that the Edinburgh International Swim Meet is on there in its normal place, if you like, in the second weekend of March, and discussions are ongoing with all the partners who normally take a strong role in that Edinburgh International Swim Meet, and when it's confirmed, it will be confirmed and publicised. But at the moment, the intention is to hold that meet, but as yet, not 100% confirmed. Does that help you?
Yeah, that's very helpful. Thank you very much for that, Alan. And I think Joe may have answered the next question, which is, when is this going to open up, for clubs to, put forward requests for licence meets?
Yeah.
I think Joe said that, East District will be doing that. Thank you. That's brilliant.
Thank you, Joe. And I did mention that. I was keen to mention that the process for licensing meets and so on continues at district level.
There's a couple of questions popping up. One, obviously, with a bit of knowledge behind it there, I guess, in terms of the wording. So when the time comes to roll out that new calendar in 2022, is there an expectation for clubs to invent new meets or, replace the meets they had, or is there going to be suggested formats and host clubs approached? I know that was something that was discussed.
Yeah, it's a great question, David. And of course, I'm very careful, having said all I said at the start, to preface the slides that we aren't dictatorial, we aren't totally prescriptive about all of this. So in my view, given the calendar, given the opportunities that there are to run certain meets on certain weekends, then I think some flexibility in that is entirely appropriate. If you're running a graded meet, you can choose the events that you want to run. If you're running a pentathlon meet, then that's a little bit more limited and prescriptive. But I think ultimately the creativity bit of it should be the fun, the racing, something that's a wee bit different, as opposed to the same old that maybe was criticised in the competition review that we conducted. So yeah, I'm not about expectation to invent meets, but certainly the flexibility to put together things which would then go to the district for licensing is yeah, within the scope of what I've said there. Absolutely encouraged, David. You could have a 50, 100 and a 400 meet if you wanted. There's nothing to stop you doing that within the parameters of what and when.
Yeah. Okay, I actually missed the start, sorry. I missed the start of the meeting.
No, well,
I guess following up from that, Alan, Martin's probably, this is maybe just a follow-on question direct from that, is, you know, there's a weekend on the slide that you've put up, 27th of February. Would that mean that there would only be licenses granted for distance meets on that weekend?
Yeah, if we go to swimming committee and this approach or this framework is adopted, Martin, that would be the case on that particular weekend, yeah. And that would guide coaching and guide preparation towards that particular meet, just like everything else would on the other weekends where different distances and strokes were taking place. Oh, sorry about that.
I've got a couple other questions coming in direct, and one of them is, I guess, probably more a statement and maybe pining for some of the things that we've put in place at the moment. The potential for a one-day district meet might not be cost effective for some of the more geographically challenging programs. So I guess up north where you ran a split district event in Aberdeen and Inverness, that might be, is it, I guess the question is going, is it something that you plan to do going forward, is potentially create those two and reduce some of the travel time?
Well, I think if districts have solutions, I mean, you could run exactly the same thing in Aberdeen and Inverness on the same weekend, as I think is happening.
Yeah.
At the moment, I think that's the district decision how they do that. If it was a time trial, I don't think it would matter because you're not creating a championship event. If it's a district championship, I think like a national championship, you would expect people to come together to compete for the title.
Yeah.
But, you know, flexibility, somebody come up with a creative idea, then there's no reason why we couldn't look at that. I should just point out later on in the calendar, and I've only put that up for illustration, we are discussing the possibility when it comes to the summer of running a similar summer meet to process to what there was at the festival this year, where there was different venues. I'm not sure our colleagues down south will like that because that's not what they're doing, but I think we in Scottish Swimming should do what's right for our swimmers, and if that means we're able to run a summer meet over 1, 2 or 3 venues, then we should try to look to do that. And this year the suggestion is that we do it at least over 2 venues, but we could do that over 3. Of course, that multiplies by a factor of 2 or 3 the number of swimmers who would be participating in those events in the summer, and I can't understand the argument against that, quite frankly. We're trying to provide more opportunities for more swimmers. If we can do the same thing in 2 or 3 venues, then why wouldn't we want to do that? But watch this space. I know there are logistical issues against that when it comes to officials and the likes, but as a principle, having 2 or 3 times more swimmers competing has to be a good thing.
We're all quiet in the chat box. I don't know if anyone else was want to unmute and ask.
Anybody wants to correct me, then I'm happy to stand corrected on anything that I've said, but I am assuming that if I needed corrected, it would have been picked up by now.
Sorry, I just pick up on what you've just said. Sorry, it's Vicky from Wick.
Hi, Vicky.
Sorry, Aberdeen and Inverness aren't the same because we have to travel to Aberdeen for a long course. And that's the only way you get to snags is through long course swimming. So it's not the same unless you're changing snags. But I don't know, I've not been on any other discussions, so.
No, I was just, you would only be able to do that.
Right, okay, it was just some feedback, that was all, so.
Yeah, no, absolutely, yeah. If Inverness want to build a 50-metre pool, that would solve your problem.
That would, wouldn't it? Be much better. Thanks.
There's, I guess, there's no real intent to have, I guess, the capacity for people to use, what's the word I'm looking for? Converted times, yeah, equivalence tables, etc. I think we've done that in the past. Is that?
I think providing we have sufficient opportunities for people to do the long course times or long course qualification for things, then it's okay. If we run out of those opportunities for whatever reasons, then it would be foolish of us not to take a look at that. But there's no intention to change things as they currently stand, certainly for snags qualification and the like.
Alan, sorry, it's Susan.
Yes,
You've all taken converted times for snags.
Yeah.
As long as it's a high-tech converted time, we don't have a problem.
Okay.
So that shouldn't really come into being an issue. I guess that's why I was highlighting it. Was
Yeah.
that will still
Sorry.
give them the opportunity.
Yep. That's why this is an effort by many, not an effort by one. Thank you for the clarification.
Even though it might seem like that, Susan.
Alan, have you got any idea when the times will be decided for snags?
That's probably a semi-committee answer, Jamie. And we meet, as I say, I think it's about 10 or 12 days. So I certainly would think that would be on the agenda for that particular meeting, and be able. I know some work has already been done on it. They haven't been approved, and ultimately Lindsay, who's on the call, and Marg would be very much a part of that process and the publication of those times. But as soon as possible, I think, so that everybody knows what they're aiming for. And I know that sounds like everything's as soon as possible, but we are trying very, very hard to get us to the point of where we can deliver on all of these things, competitions, qualifying times, selection times, etc. And it's going to be even just the density of what you can see on the screen at the moment. It may not look like this because all of this might not happen, but we're trying to provide as much, maybe more competition than we might ultimately do in years to come. But we've been so bereft of competitive opportunities that we're trying our damnedest to make sure that there's more than enough in the January to July period in next year, and things might begin to equalise or normalise in the seasons thereafter. But better to provide more opportunities, I think, at the moment. I'm not sure if John Dean's on the call, but he strongly has been arguing for as many opportunities as we can for people, given how desolate competitive opportunities are at the moment. Anything else in the chat? Oh no, just some panic.
Yeah.
Mr. Panic from Shetland. Sorry, I keep doing that. I'm just going to, I must like that diagram so much.
Yeah, nothing else coming in those.
Okay, stop sharing and see people's faces if they're on screen. I do appreciate where we are. We're probably about an hour or so in people's time. If you haven't seen any of the information, drop me an email and I can send it on to you, or I can add you to Hive. We are meeting, semi-committee is meeting in less than 2 weeks' time. So many of the decisions that are pending that need to be taken, hopefully will be done and confirmed there. And then we can go live, if you like, with either tables or dates and so on. And as Joe was saying in the chat, open those things up to clubs that want to run anything from the suite of options that there are there. And I hope people do get creative, as David has asked, and I hope that people do run Pentaqua meets, because it'd be great fun for everybody just to do something a wee bit different. A little bit of personal bias. My son's a gymnast and they to compete in all 6 events all the time, and then they add up the total scores for the day's competition. And I think we could learn from that in swimming, that we don't just get people who are breaststrokers at 9 years of age. Let's have them athletes, then swimmers, then get good at something in particular once they've shown some aptitude for it. Be a real shame to have people give up because they can't do a PB after 6 months of trying when they're 14. When actually, if they swam some other strokes, they might get quite good at those too. So I'm a big believer in a broad-based approach to athletic development. That includes activities outside of swimming, but when we're in swimming, we should also be taking a multi-stroke, multi-distance approach so that everybody gets a chance to be good at something. And the something that they get good at is something they're interested in and have an aptitude for, rather than because somebody decided somewhere along the line that they were a breaststroker.
Alan, could I just come in there?
Please do.
Just you mentioning gymnastics just now, and this is something that I've been thinking about for a while. We always just give a time, mark on time. In gymnastics, there's also a style mark or a skill mark. And it would be quite nice at the younger age to actually have the time and, you know, someone actually marking the skill of that swimmer.
Thank you, Helen. It's a lovely point to raise. And at the what was the DRP, which is now the Junior Academy, up until the pandemic, we were doing something similar to that with the process meet that we ran. So the swimmers were marked on distance underwater, on fly kick, they were marked on pacing, they were marked on their skills. And to be honest, nobody was that bothered about what time they did at all. So we have started that process. It's quite difficult, if you like, to sit in a panel like this, Sick Become Dancing judges. See what I did there? I got us on Tad and Petey just at the end of the call. But if you think of the process of swimming, how it's made up, the strokes, the skills, and the pacing, you can do that quite easily, and coaches can do that quite easily, and not really concern themselves too much with the time. Of course, racing is important, getting your hand on the wall is important, and when we did the process meet, which I'm happy to share with anybody who's on the call, we had a spreadsheet where we ran that and just added up all the totals. It was great fun. We did it in Wales, we did it up here, and you can do it without any technical officials at all, because you just run it with the people who are on poolside. So I could, it might be on Hive, but I could repost it on Hive if anybody's interested. It's the sort of thing you could do within your club just to encourage the kids to improve their skills. So thanks for raising that, Helen. It's a great point.
I think Peter's mentioned that switching off the score mode might be a useful thing. Just a personal point on that, we swam our time trials, our district time trials recently, and the scoreboard didn't work. Probably one of the most enjoyable meets I've been to in a long time, to be honest, in terms of the ability to coach swimming as opposed to times. So it might seem like a throwaway comment, but I think there is merit in what people are saying there, and I think, you know, what Helen says there in terms of technical development, as you say, is something we've all thought about for quite a while.
Thank you, Kelly. That's a lovely point. You're doing your club championship week and you one session's technique, and the points are added into the other events. That's a great idea, honestly. We're a technique-driven sport. People think it's about physiology, but it's not really. Anything else? Thank you so much for your time, everybody, and your comments and your questions. Your support is very much appreciated, both by being on the call and by challenging and questioning what we're trying to do. Spread the word. Please, if you can, if you're not participating in the leagues, consider it for next time around. And to all of you who contribute in one way or another, thank you for everything that you're doing for your swimmers as we try to get our sport back on its feet again. So webbed feet it might be, but still on its feet. So thank you for your time. You can sign off now. I'll shut the recording off. If you want to hang around for the after party, then that's fine. That's fine with me, but we won't be recording that. Thank you again, everybody, and good night.